welcome back to the Saturday edition of Crafting and Crime Daily, the show where I recap live trials. Each Saturday I have been recapping a trial that is going on in the UK. It is the trial of nurse Lucy Letby. She's equivalent to a registered nurse in the US. She's considered a senior Band 6 nurse. She worked at the Countess of Chester Hospital and worked in the neonatal intensive care unit. She had specialized training to take care of premature and sick newborns in this unit. She is accused of murdering 7 babies between June of 2015 and July of 2016. 7 murders and 10 attempted murders. She has a total of 22 charges. Now, I know you think, hey, that doesn't add up. That's 17. No. She attempted to murder some of these babies more than once, sometimes as much as 4 times. Yeah. So we're going to talk about babies C and baby D. They're all given letters of the alphabet, as this court has entered an order that they not be named in the media. Neither the parents or the babies should be named. Now, I saw an earlier article where the babies were named. It probably came out before that order, but I don't know what their names are, so I'm going to just call them by whatever the letters the courts are calling them. So here's the interesting things about babies C and D. Well, A through D. That week, Lucy was scheduled to work. She worked on the night shift. She was scheduled to work the 8th, the 9th, 13th, 14th, 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. So the night of the 8th, her first shift that week, baby A dies. The night of the 9th, baby B collapses. They resuscitate the baby, and the baby does survive. Baby C, on the night of the 13th, passes away. Nothing happens on the night of the 14th. On the night of the 21st, Lucy's next shift, baby D passes away. What? She is known as the common denominator in all of these events, either the murders or the attempted murders. She is present at every one of those collapses. Every one. Now, they actually did studies of all the nurses that worked in that unit, and the most any other nurse worked was 7. She worked every single night any of these collapsed, she was there. So interesting fun fact there. So we're going to talk about baby C. So baby C's mom, she went for an ultrasound. The baby was about 28 weeks gestation. That's pretty far along. So the results of the ultrasound show that this baby was very small. So they decide they're going to do a genetic test to see if there's anything that will explain why this baby is so small. The genetic test comes back clean. There's nothing wrong with the baby. So they don't know why this baby is very small, but they're going to continue let her pregnancy progress. However, she develops preeclampsia, high blood pressure, and that can be very, very dangerous in the late stages of a pregnancy. Well, any stage of a pregnancy, but especially during the latter stages. So she is hospitalized for monitoring. They're monitoring her, they're monitoring the baby. Well, the baby's heart rate starts to decline, so they decide to do an emergency C-section. So this baby is born prematurely, weighing 1 pound, 14 ounces. 800 grams. As you might recall, there are different levels of care for neonatal intensive care units, levels 1, 2, and 3. 3 being for the sickest, most babies that need really intensive care. 2, a baby can stay in intensive care for up to 2 days. If they're still in poor condition, they should be transferred to a level 3 hospital. And baby level 1 is just your normal newborn nursery, and if anything adverse happens, they will either go to the 2 or the 3, depending on their level of sickness. So this was a level 2 hospital. There was a discussion once this baby was born, baby C was born, about whether the baby should be transferred to another hospital. Now, the baby's very small and only 800 grams. If you just based whether the baby should be transferred on its gestation, you would say, no, this baby's probably going to do pretty well based on its gestation. But this baby was very small. So normally 800 grams is the lowest weight that a level 2 can keep a baby. So there's this discussion, should the baby be transferred to Yorkshire Hospital? So it's decided no. The baby was on a ventilator, but the baby was progressing. They did not anticipate that this baby was going to decline or need intubation or ventilator for more than 48 hours. Because if it was thought that that would happen, they would have gone ahead and transferred. So it's kind of a balancing act. What do we expect? What is the normal expectations for a progress of a baby this size and this gestation versus, should we put this baby under all this stress and transfer it over to a different hospital? So they decided no. So at the same time that this baby is being ventilated, the baby has a gastric tube. That's a tube that's put down into the baby's stomach. And what that does is any air that will get into the baby's stomach through the ventilator or later on the CPAP that this baby was weaned off to, that air will be released from that tube. Now what starts happening is the nurses note that they're getting black fluid out of that G-tube, which is very unusual. There's my clock. That's a bilious fluid, meaning it's coming from the gallbladder, bile ducts, and it means there's probably something wrong with this baby's abdomen. So they're doing testing to make sure that the baby's abdomen is okay, and everything that they're doing comes back that the baby's fine. The baby's abdomen's fine. So the doctors cannot explain why the baby is having this fluid. Now, one thought is that the baby might have necrotizing enterocolitis, which is known as NEC. It's a very horrible, horrible condition, and it's one that babies a very high mortality rate with that condition. But as it turns out, that's not what this baby had. The baby did not have NEC. So the baby is weaned to the CPAP machine, which I think I have explained that before. It's called continuous positive airway pressure. So that's just this continuous inflow of air through nasal prongs that goes into the baby to keep their airway open. So a lot of that air does get into the stomach, but it's released by that gastric tube. Now, Lucy Letby was not the assigned nurse for this baby that night, but she kept hovering around. The nurse supervisor for that night said Lucy Letby was, constantly milling about, talking to the parents, and was in the family room for no apparent reason that they could find. So this baby was actually born at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3:31 p.m. Now, the mother testified that she had gone to see the baby that evening and says, do you want us to call a priest to have the baby baptized? And mom says, a priest? Is my baby going to die? And the nurse says, yes, I think so. So they call a priest. The priest comes in, baptizes the baby. The mom is told that the baby is dead. They hand her the baby to hold, and she says, my baby is still breathing. How creepy is that? So they agree with her. Oh, yeah, she's still breathing. So they're asking the mom, do you want us to continue resuscitation? So they quickly do a scan of the baby's brain, and they find out that the baby's brain dead. So the mom says, no, don't. We just want to be with the baby until the baby passes away. So they put this woman and her husband into the family room to stay with their baby until the baby actually really passes away, for sure this time. And the nursing supervisor testified that Lucy kept going into that room. And the parents testified that a nurse, and that the father identified as Lucy, came in and said, "All right, you've had enough time. Let me put the baby in the bassinet and take it to the morgue." And they're like, "The baby's not dead yet. And, we're going to stay with our baby until the baby passes away." Yeah. The nursing supervisor said she had to tell Lucy, "Listen, you need to go take care of your own babies. Let the assigned nurse take care of what's going on in the family room. Okay, you need to back off." Crazy. Now, interestingly enough, after this baby does pass away, Lucy Letby looks them up on Facebook, as she does with baby D, which is the next baby we're going to talk about. Baby D's mother testified that she went to the hospital when her water broke. She was full term. This is a full term baby. This is expected. Her water broke. She goes to the Countess of Chester Hospital. They send her home. They say, "No, you're not in labor. Go ahead and go on home." Expert testimony later on says that that's our procedure. If mom's not in labor and her water breaks, we let them go home and just wait till they go into labor within 24 hours. So 24 hours passes by. This mom is concerned, because once your membranes are ruptured, that is an open path for that baby to get an infection. And 48 hours, you're at a really high risk that baby's going to come out with an infection. So at 24 hours, mom goes back to the hospital. They admit her. They say, "We're going to induce your labor." So they do an induction. This mom sits there for the next 24 hours. So now she's at 48 hours. And it's not until then that she's finally seen by a physician. A physician comes in to see her. He said, "You're okay, the baby's okay. I think the baby will be delivered by 4 o'clock or within the next 4 hours." So at 3 o'clock that afternoon, they finally, she's not progressing. The mom's labor is not progressing. So they take her and they do a cesarean section. Now this baby comes out 6 pounds, 14 ounces. That's a fairly good weight. Born at 4:01 p.m. Not crying. Doesn't cry. Looks a little grayish. Now, the APGAR scores, which is the scores you give at 1 minute, 5 minute, 10 minutes, this baby's APGAR scores were pretty good, which doesn't equate with what the mother is saying she saw, that the baby's not crying and looks gray. So they take mom to postpartum. The baby goes with her. At 3.5 hours, into this thing, the baby stays with mom for the next 3.5 hours, during which time mom keeps telling nurse, "This baby doesn't look right. The baby doesn't look right." So finally a doctor comes in to look at the baby, and they transfer the baby at 7:30 that night to the neonatal intensive care unit. Now this is on June 20th. So the following day, so that night, as soon as the baby gets to the neonatal intensive care unit, the baby is placed on a ventilator. The baby is breathing on its own somewhat, but not effectively breathing. So they ventilate the baby so that the baby can rest and the lungs can rest, because what they say this baby had was called transient tachypnea of a newborn. It's short for TTN, transient tachypnea of the newborn, and it means that like the baby has his fast respirations, and it's just a condition that full-term babies can develop when they're septic. So they're testing this baby for an infection. They're starting antibiotics. Mom is visiting that evening. They actually were able to quickly wean the baby off the ventilator and put the baby on continuous positive airway pressure. That's the CPAP machine. But they felt like the baby's breathing was still too shallow to take the baby off of the CPAP. So they had tried a few times before Lucy comes in that night to wean the baby off the CPAP, but it doesn't work. Every time they take the baby off the CPAP, the baby gets dusky and gray again, so they put the baby back on CPAP. I don't know why they kept doing that. going back and forth. I would have thought they would just let the baby rest for a while. Put the baby on the CPAP, let the baby rest. Here's my thought on that. Hold on. One of the defenses in this case is that they were short of staff at this hospital. And if a baby's on a ventilator or on CPAP, that means they got to have one nurse assigned to that baby. Now, my question is, between, at 7:15 p.m., 15 minutes before the next shift is coming on, you're trying to get this baby off of that CPAP. Did you not have enough nurses to take care of that baby? That's my question. That would be my question. Why are you rushing this baby? Because like I said, why not leave the baby on CPAP overnight and start your weaning the next morning? Why are you stressing this baby out by taking him off, putting him on, taking him off, putting him on? That's just my opinion. I used to be a neonatal intensive care nurse, by the way, just saying. So, swipe data indicates that at 7:26 p.m., Lucy Letby comes in for her shift, and that's when she's supposed to be there. So, from 7:30 to 8 p.m., they have the handover, where one chair nurse gives a report to the next nurse, and then Lucy's shift would start at 8 p.m. But now Lucy's not the designated nurse for that baby that night. Lucy is in a room 3. She's got other babies assigned to her. The nurse that's taking care of baby D decides she's going to go on a break at 1:25 a.m. So she has Lucy cover for her. And interestingly enough, there's a medication that was administered at 1:25, or after this nurse goes on break, that's given by Lucy Letby. But in the nursing records has the signature of the assigned nurse with Lucy co-signing. Now, when this nurse testifies in court, she said, "I did not administer anything. I was on a break. That's not my handwriting. That's Lucy's handwriting." Interesting. So she gets back from break to find that the baby has collapsed while she was on break. But they quickly get the baby back on CPAP, and everything seems to be going fine. Then at 2:40 a.m., there's another IV fluid administered to this baby, intravenous, but it's not intravenous, it's administered through the umbilical cord, which is how you administer meds to some babies. Some babies have IVs. The sicker babies have IVs through tubes into their umbilical cords, but it's the same fluid that you would administer through an IV, but it's going a different way into the baby. Now, during this administration, the baby's crying and the oxygen saturation is decreasing. And the signature for that medication is the nurse assigned to the baby, co-signed by Lucy Letby. So at 3:20 a.m., another IV infusion is started or hung. Probably one bag might have run out and they're starting another, or maybe it was the antibiotic that they were infusing, but something is hung to be infused by IV, and that child collapses at that point and does not respond to resuscitation and passes away. During this resuscitation, Lucy Letby is the one administering medication. The nurse supervisor testifies that they have an administration record that you make this out for each baby, this administration record. And it has, I used to do this, when I was a NICU nurse. If you get a new baby, you have this administration record, and it has all the different drugs that you might have to administer emergently. You put the baby's weight in at the top, and then you calculate how much, what the dosage should be of each of those drugs should there be an emergency. Well, this sheet happens to have gotten lost for this emergency, and Lucy was administering these drugs. So the nurse supervisor says, "How were you doing that if you couldn't find the sheet?" She goes, "Based on my experience, based on the baby's weight and my experience, I knew how much to give." What? Yeah. So the experts' conclusions were that baby C died from an injection of air into his or her belly. Baby D died from an injection of air into that venous line that went into through the umbilical cord. The cause of death was listed as an air in the bloodstream, or an air embolus. Very interesting. Now I want to read you guys some text that were done by Lucy Letby between the time babies A and B die on the 8th and 9th and the 13th when baby C dies. She did some text messaging that I want to read to you. All right, following the deaths of baby A, and then baby B collapses but survives. Following that, and prior to baby C dying, Lucy texts one of her colleagues and she's asking for spare shifts. She says, I think I need to throw myself back in on Saturday. The response that the supervisor gives her is, hopefully it might settle down by then, which leads me to believe they were very, very busy. It might go with my theory. Letby says, I think from a confidence point of view, I need to take on an intensive treatment unit baby soon. In other words, one of the babies in room 1 that needs the most intensive care. The response she got was, it does knock you a bit when things like that happen, but it's okay to have time out as well. Enjoy the sun. So in response to that, she texts one of her other colleagues and says, I just keep thinking about Monday. Feel like I need to be in the neonatal unit room 1 to overcome it. But, and then she mentions whoever she had just texted, the nursing supervisor, said no. The response she gets from her friend is, I agree with her. Don't think it will help. You need a break from full-on intensive care unit. You need to let it go or it will eat you up. Lucy says, not the vented baby necessarily. I just feel I need to be in one to get the image out of my head. The response she gets, she continues, it probably sounds odd, but it's how I feel. The response she gets says, well, it's up to you, but I don't think it's going to help. Then another text message that she sends, forget I said anything. I will be fine. It's part of the job. Just don't feel like there's much team spirit tonight. The response she gets is, I'm not going to forget, but think you're way too hard on yourself. Lucy says, referring to previous events, she had been in a women's hospital and support was available following such events. So that's interesting text messages from Miss Letby. So Lucy is interviewed, once she's arrested, she's interviewed about baby C, and she says, when interviewed about child C, the defendant said she remembered him because he was a small baby. Letby recalled he deteriorated not long after his first feed by one of the nurses, but said she had no involvement in that. Her only involvement with child C was when she was asked to help with a resuscitation attempt, she told police. She added that she had a vague recollection of taking child C's hand and footprints for a memory box while the infant was sat with his parents, but couldn't be certain. She went on to say she found the boy's death quite hard because he lived several hours after the collapse, and she had not seen that before. Detectives also asked her about a conversation in which a nurse was said to have asked child C parents if they wanted him to be taken away in the cradle while he was still alive. She replied she had no recollection of making that comment and questioned whether the parents had said she was the nurse who said that. She said it was very sad for the parents, and she denied administering any air into baby C. She did accept that she made Facebook searches for his parents about 10 hours after their son died, but could not remember doing the searches or why. Okay, that's just weird. Okay. Next week, I will cover babies E and F, who are twins. So more to come. Yep. Guys, have a great weekend. I will see you. I'll be live tomorrow at 11 a.m. on Sunday, where we're talking about our mystery diamond painting event. Yes, my mystery painting is almost done. I've figured out it's a baby dragon. It's super cute. All right, guys, have a great day. Take care.